Let's crack open a beer and share some thoughts.
Welcome to Hopinions, and after the full houses of the last couple of shows, it's just me and you tonight, mate.
Yes, that song, just the two of us, isn't it?
I know, it feels a bit empty in here, doesn't it?
It does, unusual.
Yeah.
Although the two shows we did recently with plenty of people added, the time the show took went down.
Yes, yeah, I think it's something when just you and I get going.
Yeah.
A little
Seems
bit.
to stretch out the time, so pre-warning there.
Very much so, yeah. And I just want to just start off by saying that I know at the beginning of this season we said we were going fortnightly.
Yep.
And this is our third show in 3 weeks.
Yep.
We didn't mention it last week, but the show that we did last week with Beer Bods, the ones to watch, was an extra show that we put in that we had arranged to do with Beer Bods, specifically to focus on that box.
Yeah.
So
we battled the trains and the snow just to do that. Just to drink 12 beers between four of us.
Yes, and a great time was had.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I sort of darted off to make sure I did get a train, but you, Matt and Justin helped clear up by having another beer, didn't you?
We did, yeah, and I think there may have been train beers as well.
I had a train beer.
Possibly. So, we've got a beer in front of us to start off tonight. We have got the Kernel, and this is one of their table beer variants.
Yes, so like all the Kernel beers, they very rarely don't have a variant of it. So this one has got Chinook and a Mosaic. And comes in at 2.9%.
2.9%.
Now, we were talking before we started recording, you're not sure you've had a Kernel table beer, Steve?
I don't think I have, and the reason being because of the low ABV.
2.9%?
Yeah.
So if you rocked up at the Kernel, at Bermondsey, because they only do the takeaways now on Saturday anyway, and you were picking your case of 12 just to max out on the amount you're going to get, one of these wouldn't end up in there then?
Not at the moment, but maybe after tonight.
Well,
we shall see.
Let's find out.
Cheers.
Cheers.
It's really light.
It's light. There's some little floral notes for me. There's still a nice bitterness running through it as well.
There's quite a big bitterness at the end of it. It's quite punchy.
I think the bitterness is handy because what the Kernel, unlike some of the small beers that are coming out recently, they don't add stuff to it like oatmeal or wheat, do they, to give that fuller mouthfeel?
No.
I think therefore you need the bitterness as well to feel like you're getting that lasting amount of mouthfeel still. Yeah. I've been a big fan of these. I've had quite a few variants because the ABV changes as well, doesn't it? I mean,
yes. Yeah.
I think it's been 2.7, 2.9, 3.1.
I've got to say, I probably, was I given that blind? There's no way I'd call it being such a low ABV.
Yeah, I don't think you pitched that at 2.9. You'd say it was one of the lighter Kernel beers. Mm. If you knew it was a Kernel, you'd say it's one of the lighter ones, but you probably still wouldn't pitch it.
You could probably guess it was a Kernel, though.
I think you could guess it was a Kernel.
Yeah.
But that's a good thing. Well, when you say sometimes you can guess a beer by other certain aspects, it's often a bad thing when you're saying it. But I think this is very much a good thing when we're saying it about the Kernel. I think it's really drinkable.
Mm. And that's going to be very much on point as we get into tonight's show because we're not jumping into it just yet, but all of the beers that we're featuring tonight are ranging from 2.9%, which we've got here, up to the grand 4.2% that we're going to finish with.
It's the big blowout at the end.
It is indeed. But we'll come on to that, and we'll come on to what are plenty of comments what people have had about this week.
Definitely, there's been some really good comments about
a little bit later on.
I reckon we move on.
Let's just jump straight into the news then. So first up, the big news, the big festival announcement of the summer that everybody's been waiting for.
Yeah, forget about the change from V to Rise or whatever it's called. Yeah. This is it.
This is it. We are appearing at Peakender.
Yep.
So we've been asked by Thornbridge to bring a live podcast experience to one of the performance tents at the Peakender Festival, which we're very excited about.
Not one of the main stage.
I'm hoping,
the main stage.
I'm hoping for a headlining slot on the main stage.
I mean, we need to find out who our supporting acts are going to be, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can probably give them a list of who I'd like that to be, along with the rider that I want for it. But that's about as much as we know about that at the moment, because we are literally just we
know the dates.
We know the dates, yeah. So it's the 17th to the 19th of August. I don't believe tickets are on sale yet for it, but if you're going, if you was going to go, if you're a listener of the show, it would be great to have you along in the audience for that.
It'll be some point this Saturday afternoon, so it'll be the Saturday the 18th of August. If you're around, or even just the thought of asking us some questions and maybe seeing how we can cock it up live.
Yeah.
Feel free to join.
Ask us to pronounce something.
Yeah, pretty much anything.
Yes, yeah. But there'll be more news on that as we come up with a format of what we're going to do.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Next up, got some news from Cask Ale Week.
Steve's favourite week of the year.
Well, I'll throw this one in just for you, mate, to talk about. So this is the 20th to the 30th of September. They've launched the festival with a new look brand. So they've got a new logo for the week, which incorporates the shape of a cask end and pump handle. I have to say I can't remember what the previous one.
Nor could I, and I thought if they hadn't told me, I would have said it was the same one.
Yeah.
So I thought it had a cask handle anyway.
Well, yeah, that's me too. But so they've said because it's 10 years, it's a good time to evaluate and celebrate the contribution of cask pubs to the industry, and they wanted something that reflected that in the new logo. And they are encouraging pubs, breweries, trade organisations, camera branches, organisers, festivals, and groups of individuals are all invited to use the week to showcase how good cask beer can be served. So more news about that, I imagine, as the year goes on, as we get closer to September.
I think it's always a good initiative. You just need the right brewers, pubs, breweries, all that kind of stuff to all come together and just highlight it, showcase it.
I've got to say, it's probably unsurprisingly something I've never really got involved in.
I don't think actually, personally, I think we see a lot of stuff come out in the media. When it actually, I tend to hear stuff about it quite far out, and when you get to that period, it's like somehow seems to bypass me.
Yeah, there is an app though, which I think they'll be launching as well. That you can promotes. So Caskmark promotes Cask Ale Week through its Cask Finder app. Over 30,000 beer and pub explorers will use the app to join the world's biggest ale trail. Over the 10 days of Cask Ale Week, their use increases by 65%. So I suppose if people are that way inclined, there's a way to get involved.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see if they do push it a little bit more with the 10-year anniversary as well.
Yeah, you'd think, wouldn't you? You'd think there's going to be some fairly big celebrations.
What you need is the right people to get on board.
Yeah.
And say, we're brewing this just for Cask Ale Week.
That's what you need. You need some specials.
Yeah.
Yeah. Specials
will get people interested in it, because surely you want to try and appeal to the people who already aren't converted anyway, or the people who go, well, it's always going to be the same.
Yeah.
Or who say flat brown
twiggle. Yeah. Proving that it can be a bit more than that.
Yeah, exactly.
So next up we've got a new release, which is the worlds of beer and cider colliding to create Graph, which is the UK's first fermented hybrid beer. So this is it's been co-fermented it's a co-fermented hybrid of beer and cider made by cider makers. So it's made on a London cidery.
Yeah.
And it's a new addition to their core range, and they're looking to push their own understanding of cider, moving it to exciting new places. So they've used Braeburn and Bramley apples, fermented caramelised and malty beer wort, and American ale and Sauvignon Blanc yeasts added to create complexity in the liquid. So what do we think about that?
Different.
It's very different, isn't it? It's
certainly
certainly not something I'm going to be drinking.
I'd love to see you try it though.
It's really not the sort of thing I'm interested in. I've got to admit.
Depends. Even if I saw it and I tried it and I thought it was nice and it's worth it. If it's a bit of a gimmicky thing, not worth it. When they say about pushing innovation in, things like pushing innovation in cider, that kind of stuff, I still want my cider to taste like cider.
Do you think this will taste like cider? It's got hops in it as well. It's got Amarillo and Cascade hops in
Don't
it.
really, I can't picture in my mind what it might taste like. Because that's a real mix of flavours there with the yeast as well.
Do you not think it will taste like a wild beer?
That, in my head, that's probably the closest I can get to it, is that it'll be something of that ilk.
Yeah, something that's been had wild fermentation.
Yeah.
Just been left to get on with it.
Yeah. But if anyone does try it, let us know.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from anybody
Yeah.
that's tried that. Let us know whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. Before we get on to the rest of the news, let's talk some more about the beer.
It's easy to drink, isn't it?
It's very easy to drink. I mean, I'm almost done with mine. It's I mean, you are getting this incredible lightness to it that then follows through with a superb bitter finish.
The bitter lasts as well. It doesn't hit you and then drop off. It does leave it. Then there's that little bit of sort of dry residue feeling. Enough to go back again is what they're giving us. And again, I think you're right. I've stopped thinking about it being 2.9%. Hasn't crossed my mind since we said it at the start. It just is what it is. I could make a few of those.
I think you could easily drink a few of those, and I think, as we said at the beginning, it's one of those Kernel variants that changes in terms of the hops that are going into it, the malt bill, the ABV. But I don't think. I mean, you've drunk more of this than I have. When I've seen it, I don't think I've ever seen it much above 3.2, 3.4.
Yeah, I think 3.2 is the highest I've seen it, and I've seen it down to maybe 2.8, 2.7. So it's 0.5 of the range, which isn't dissimilar to some of the other core-ish beers anyway. I think it's really good. I think the Kernel were one of my favourite low ABV beers with a table beer. One of the best ones I've found in the past, and definitely one of the earlier ones as well. Because the phrase table beer, I mean, Marble have table beer now as well, don't they?
They do, yeah.
That's nice as well. I think I've had that on cask as well, which sort of adds that bit of body to it.
A bit more malty to it, yeah.
It's got that slightly bigger mouthfeel, and I had that on a nice hot summer's day when I had it. Yeah, I like it. I think it's a good start to our sessionable session.
It is indeed. So back into the news and two similar stories to finish with. So first up, we mentioned last week that Northern Monk had launched some crowdfunding. As we record tonight, their target was £500,000, which they smashed in about 2 days, I think it was.
Smashed on the pre-funding, didn't they?
Well, yeah, before it went live, they had raised half of that from like private investors and family and friends. So as we record now, it's currently at just over £800,000.
So they're well on target to meet their stretch.
Yeah, and they've still got about 20 odd days to go to finish that. So people have properly gone mad. For this.
There was a lot of noise about this one.
Yeah,
there's a lot of noise about this one.
Yeah, and this was so. In terms of, the detail that we didn't have when we recorded this last week was in terms of what you could invest. So on the crowdfunder site, you can invest. I think it's in units of 10, 100, 500, and then it starts going up to.
Yeah, this is a slightly. We might come to it, but it's a slightly different type of pitch they're going for. They are selling equity in the company.
Yes, yeah, rather than giving away stuff.
So £10 gets you a key ring, £20 gets you a key ring and tote bag, £30 gets you a couple of bottles of beer and the above. Yeah, they're not doing that.
No, you've got to invest. Because I looked at it, and before you even start getting beer thrown in to the offer, you've had to invest a serious amount of money.
I think you were into 4 figures by that point, weren't you?
I think so. Yeah, but great to see that they're clearly on target to hit that stretch.
Oh yeah, well yeah, because as I said before, this means we get the brew pub in London,
which is what we want.
Yeah, it's definitely what we want.
Yeah,
don't care about anyone else. This is what we want.
Yes, it's what we want. So make it happen.
Yeah, so carry on,
folks. Also crowdfunding as well at the moment are Left-Handed Giant. Brewing.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see this one straight away.
No, me either.
Maybe because Northern Monk seemed to be ruling the
I think it
social media.
launched the same day, actually, or within 24 hours.
It was very
Northern
close.
Monk, yeah. So they were looking to raise 450,000 to enable them to create a true home for their business in the centre of Bristol. They want to build a new brewery where there'll be a bar, restaurant and event space, and then their existing brewery will become a mixed fermentation specific facility with a cool ship and extended barrel section as well. Looking to develop sours with a true tie to their local identity. Now, as I say, their target was 450, and again, as we record this, they are at almost 600,000. So again, they've smashed their target.
And again, in a very short space of time.
Yeah, still about 20 days left on that as well. But again, very similar to the Northern Monk crowdfunding, going up in increments of 10, 100, 500, and then you're into your four figures.
But again, where did the beery options come in?
Well, I was up to, I think, 1,000, and it hadn't even
mentioned beer.
Spoken about beer.
Yeah,
but
the pictures for both of those seem very similar to me. In some matches, it was, we'll give you the £10 option, but basically it was an investment. We're not.
They want big investment, don't they, for these, rather than people that want to invest and get something back as a result.
Yeah, which sort of leads us to our Paul's question of the week.
Questions fill my head.
With the success of Northern Monk and Left Hand Giant Brewing Co. crowdfunding investment schemes, which they most certainly appear to be, what makes you willing to invest in breweries, or are you not interested in doing so? Steve?
Okay, so I suppose full disclosure in terms of investments I've made. I don't mind sharing that. So I am an EFP, invested into Brewdog in round 4, and invested actually quite an amount into Brewdog in round 4. I was specifically, for that investment, I wasn't looking to be part of the club, and I don't identify as a punk or anything like that. What I wanted the discounts in their bars, I wanted the discount online, and I wanted what I get in terms of I get a day ahead of anybody else on new releases to buy.
And the especially on the specials like the AB abstracts and things like that as well, isn't it?
Yeah. So that was my reason for investing in Brewdog.
And how long ago was Brewdog your first?
Brewdog was my first investment. That was probably 3 years ago now. EFP.
Okay, so that's back to 2015 was your first beery investment. And what have you followed that up with?
So since then, my next one was when we, as a group of us, invested into the White Hag in Ireland, where they were looking to raise money they wanted to basically bring some barrels into the brewery to be able to do a barrel aging program.
Yeah.
And basically what they were looking for was money to buy the barrels. So I think there were 6 of us from Bottle Share, all put in a share of the cost of one of those barrels, and now we jointly own one of those barrels for 3 years.
Yeah, it's a 3-year return, isn't it?
Yeah.
So a release of beers, year 1, year 2, year 3.
Yeah, and we get beer for that.
Yes.
So
there's nothing else we get other than that.
We get an invite to their birthday party every
year. Is literally in the middle of Ireland.
Yeah. Which is tough to get to for us.
Even if you're in Ireland, looking at some of the choices of routes, it's still tough to get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so in terms of you get the chance to go there, but it's beer is what we invested in.
Yeah, and I think for me it was that at the time it was something very, very unique. Hadn't seen anything like that.
No, I think we commented about that at the time.
We want you to fund our barrel program.
Yeah.
So
it's a bit like a few football stadiums. I think Sunderland did it, where you could buy a brick and have your name on the brick.
Yeah. Quite a lot do that, don't they?
Yeah, which is quite again a little bit something different. You are part of it then, aren't you?
Yeah. I've then invested in Beer Nouveau's Heritage program.
Snap.
Because it was too good to let it pass by.
And I think we sort of went in at whatever the maximum
was.
We
went in at the maximum, and then I don't know about you, but I also did the extension offer as well, which gave you another beer on top of everything else.
Yeah, I think I just maxed out on whatever he was offering.
Yeah, and I think for that again, we get beer, we get an invite to launch parties of those beers. But for me, that was very much about being part of something very, very unique.
Yes,
and having met Steve a few times, the passion that fella has.
Yeah.
I felt like I was investing in him more than anything else because I believe that he can do what he wants to set out to do.
I'd agree with that. You know, my first meeting with Steve was when we recorded. He very kindly let us record at his tap room with Beer Nomicon, and the beers we had that day were recreation of recipes, weren't they?
They were, yeah.
You know, so you know, I think we had a recreation of Dog Bolter, a variant of like an old broadside type recipe.
Yeah,
and
called not broadside.
Yeah, and even then, I'm thinking these were really good beers, but he was so passionate about it.
Yeah.
As well. So I to add my bit, I also did the same. I did invest, as I said, but it was fairly much a similar feeling to you. I'm investing. Yeah, don't get me wrong. The beery returns and the chance to go up there again to the tap room, all brilliant. But I truly believe that Steve will crack it.
Yeah, we're investing in those beers that are going to come out of that, and I think I actually remember we delayed the recording of the show that night so that we could make sure that we got in on that crowdfunder as well. And then the last one that I invested in recently, I think probably you did as well, was the Beer Merchants Tap Direct. Because why wouldn't you give them £1 and get £2 back?
Yeah, I can't get that return in many other places unless I bet it all on black and black comes up.
So for me, in answer to Paul's question there, I kind of want something back from what I'm investing, and I've looked at both of the Northern Monk and the left-handed ones, and as we've said, that's very much about them raising equity and you're buying shares into the company, but you're getting very little back for what. Unless you've got to invest a lot of money to get something back. Yeah,
you're looking for a return on your investment on this one, and the return isn't beery rewards based on just how much you've given them, and then whether they use that money wisely or not. You need them to. If you're investing in this one, you do want them to use your money wisely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because otherwise, you do not get anything, and obviously, you only get something if you then presumably. Well, I don't know how often they're going to pay out dividends or how early they might pay out dividends. It would only be then if you sell on, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But you realise any sort of profit.
And I sold some of my Brewdog shares that I bought, and I made back from the small amount of shares that I was allowed to sell. I actually made back half of what I invested. So, and I've still got all the benefits and perks that I invested in. So actually, so far for me, Brewdog's worked out pretty okay.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done Brewdog. I did a local brewery, Wibblers, but that was based on the fact that there was money off at the tap room for the first year, which I did use, and invites to their opening party, which I didn't use because, and I pointed this out to them at the time, they opened up on a Friday afternoon, which wasn't highly convenient.
Yeah,
exactly.
Strange one.
Exactly. So I have to admit, on a few of the crowdfunding that I have got invested in, I feel like I've been bitten. My enthusiasm, and I'm no mug, and we're not talking big amounts, but even with the White Hag thing, we didn't quite get what we were sold for the year one.
That's
which
true.
Has made it a little bit more difficult for us logistically as a group. But my feeling is that unless I've had a bit, something. If I came into a big load of money, and I think someone did pitch a 50,000 lump to Northern Monk.
Yeah.
And I had that spare cash, then I would much rather invest it in something that I love, something I have a vested interest in, all those kind of things. Because when Paul McCartney was after advice latterly in his career, the Beatles, what should he put his money in? And the advice he got from Linda's father, who was part of the Eastman Kodak family, was invest in stuff you know and like. And that's when he started investing in other song rights. That's when he bought Buddy Holly rights and stuff like that. I'd buy stuff in beer. That's what I would do if I had the money. But if I'm only pitching up with £50 or £100, I probably want beer back.
Yeah.
I like those little beer rewards, but I can understand if you want to grow properly, and those beer rewards are probably quite administratively burdensome to do. if 100 people do a load of £10, another 100 do a load of £25, which is probably why I think Cave Direct one worked really well, because although they're giving us £2 worth of beer for every pound we invested, it's simple.
It's very simple.
To administer, it's simple.
Yeah.
So in answer to, I think me and you are probably fairly well aligned on this one. It's the beery rewards and the chance maybe to turn up at the tap room and that kind of thing. And I think that's why, I think we talked about it before, but that's why a couple of years ago when Camden did sell up, that's why people were quite bitten by that one, because people had invested in it not for the return, which they got a very good return on their investment in terms of cash, but they wanted to be able to rock up to the tap room the day before the beer got released and share it with them, have the releases, be part of a club. I think that's why people felt badly bitten on that one, weren't it? So yeah, good question, Paul.
Yeah, thanks for that, Paul. As always, that came from Paul at UNRCD, who does always seem to have a question for us, hence why he seems to have his own segment.
I don't know quite how that's happened. Paul has his own segment on the show.
On the show.
And while we were talking about that, you opened another beer, Steve.
I did. So, second beer of this evening, again, staying on point. This is from Summer Wine Brewery, and this is Pico Diego. It's a little big pale ale at 3.5%.
We've gone crazy.
We are absolutely blowing the roof off tonight, aren't we? Cheers.
Cheers. That's fruitier than the first beer.
It is. It's a first thing. It's a bit darker.
A bit darker, and if you're talking visually, slightly different on the carbonation, but I guess that's also canned versus bottle. And it feels bigger in the mouth.
A lightly tropical nose on it. As well. Yeah, like I said, big mouthfeel.
It has got a bigger mouthfeel.
Lots of citrus, and again a big bitter finish. On that again.
I would say it's probably a drier finish than a bitter finish, and definitely drier than the Kernel beer was. But Summer Wine Brewery are doing some. I think they've really picked up again. I think they have. Absolutely,
since they've been putting out the Tall Boys.
Yeah.
It's kind of reacquainting yourself.
But this is where a tall boy works for me. When if you got 3.6%, what was it?
3.5%.
3.5%. A tall boy works really well.
Put 4 of those in your bag in the summer, you'd be happy, wouldn't you? On a train journey somewhere.
Exactly. That's a 20-minute train journey, no problem.
Yeah, easily. That's really tasty. That one. I mean, it says on the can, American West Coast inspired pale ale. I can't disagree with that.
No.
It ticks all of those boxes. But to get that flavour profile and that bitter finish on a 3.5% beer,
but it's still really well balanced as well. They haven't gone too far on anything. And again, I would struggle to say this was 3.5 on the blind tasting.
Yeah,
you'd have to be better than me at tasting this stuff, because I'm not picking it out.
I'd put this at 5, maybe 5.5 if someone gave that to me.
Which I suppose then goes with their little big pale ale.
Absolutely, and it fits quite nicely into the main segment of this week's show, mate.
Opinions, 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 opinions.
So we asked, are there enough good session beers around, or is it just about the big ABV now? So the options we gave were yes, plenty, no, we need more, and session, give me that ABV. So we had 421 votes, lots of comments, which we're going to get into, but 46% of people said yes, there's plenty of beers around. 42% of people said no, and only 12% of people want to just drink big ABV beers all of the time. What do you think? Are we seeing enough of this sort of beer that we're drinking right now?
I think we're seeing a lot more of it now. I think people, brewers, and maybe retailers as well, both on and off trade, have seen that if people are willing to give up alcohol for, say, a month, whether that be October for Stoptober or January for Dry January, that kind of stuff, then perhaps there's also a market for people who don't want to do that, but do want to have a bit of sensible head on. I think in the last year we have started to see these kind of beers, but I also think they were getting better. I said we need more because I think there's so much choice at your say 5% plus, I would love to see them brewers just carry on doing these sort of beers at this sort of sessionable strength. And joking aside from when we've said sessionable before, for me sessionable is going to be that 4.5 and below probably, where you can have an afternoon maybe if you were round of friends, or just an afternoon in the pub watching the football or whatever it might be, but you're not going to then be rolling out there later on, or if you have to go somewhere else in the evening, you can still do it. So I would say that probably it's not necessarily no, we need more, but I would love to see more coming out.
Do you think this is more of a demonstration of a brewer's skill and ability to be able to produce a beer that tastes this good at this ABV? I think so.
Because if you listen to any brewers talk, and people who know more shit than we do, the things that you hear them talking about, two things they talk about is that, one, to create a really good sessionable beer is one of the hardest things to do. Conversely, you can create a big ABV beer and you can probably hide a lot by the alcohol as well. So I think it's probably quite hard to hide your faults in your beer when you bring the ABV down. Because I reckon you've got less margins to play with, and you haven't got necessarily that big body to hold it up, or maybe even that bit of an alcohol burn when you drink it. So I would say that if a brewer can make a truly sessionable beer or beers, then I would say they're probably pretty good at what they do. Well, what's your thinking, Steve?
I'm probably along the lines of, I think I'd like to see more of this. Actually, I think yes, we've probably got plenty out there, but you may still have to look for it, and you may still have to search it out a little bit. I'd like to be in a position where maybe we're seeing as many of these beers on the shelf as we are the 7, 8, 9% double IPAs on the shelves as well. Because we've done 2 so far tonight. We've got another couple to do, but it's from what we've tried so far, the lack of ABV in them is not making the beer any worse. No,
definitely not. And with the exception of one beer, we've got these beers here tonight where we're recording at Liquorice and Shenfield. So this is part of their. These are the beers we've chosen, probably fairly regular in their selection these days.
Yeah, table beers always here.
Yeah. And Summer Wine Brewery's been here for a little while now. They've really picked up on those tall boy cans.
Yeah.
And then the couple of beers we'll be having as well out of the next 2 are in their shelves. And we had a beer before we started it when we were, just off air, and we got it from here as well. So you're starting to see them in the retail sector.
You are, I think both of us were quite keen, and it's a shame we've obviously just missed the cycle that we wanted to probably put one of the Cloudwater small beers on. Yeah. Which we've both had before off air. We had a recent bottle share as
really
well.
Really enjoyed.
And we would have loved to have featured one of those as part of it.
And that's where I think the fact that we've both discussed it before at separate times, that big, hazy, almost murky, thick mouthfeel that they create on their big beers, when they do it on this one, on their small beers, works perfectly. Works really, really well, because you've got that body, you've got that mouthfeel, without detracting from the fact. And they come in at about 2.7, 2.8. So again, I never thought Cloudwater would do that. With all the other beers they've done and the way that they've gone, for them to then suddenly say, okay, here you go. Here's some sub 3% beers. What do you think of these? And going, yeah, these are all right.
But so tasty as well, and certainly not lacking in any department.
In the 2, 3, 4 key things that I look for in a beer, I thought the Cloudwater sort of ticks all the boxes, to coin a phrase.
Yeah.
For need more. I'd say we're really getting there at the moment. Love to see that people carry on doing that. I think as we get into the comments and stuff, we'll probably have some more things to say anyway, but relating to the comments, which we had some really, really good feedback. And what I have noticed is that we are now getting a few of our listeners that are using the extra characters on Twitter to really expand on the point they want to make as well. I think that's really helping with some of the feedback we're getting for this. 421 votes plus all the comments. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Well, let's dive into some of those, shall we? So first up from Jamie at Merchant of Shite. It's an art getting loads of flavour out of a relatively low ABV, a bit of a challenge for a decent brewery. Maybe it's too easy to mask an unbalanced beer by ramping up one particular characteristic, and strength always aids that. I mean, that's what we've just said that, haven't we?
Okay.
For all intents and purposes. Bruce Ritchie at Ritchie2706. I just find ABV are in general more flavoursome. Discuss.
I don't think if I find them more flavoursome. I think sometimes I find a bigger beer more satisfying. But it also depends when I'm having the bigger beer. If it is an afternoon or early evening in the pub, then if I can find the right beer, I'm happy to just stick with it, and I'm not chasing the next one. I don't necessarily need that to be big, but I probably find them. There are obviously exceptions to every rule we talk about. I find them more satisfying at times, but it probably doesn't mean I can have 2 or 3 of them.
You've got to draw a line, haven't you?
Yeah.
You can't. I mean, we joke sometimes about 7.4 sessionable.
Yeah. It's not.
It's not. I mean, I've tried to spend a night on just doing Cannonball,
and we know what happens.
Yeah, I've ended up a complete mess.
Yeah, and the same when we had Jack Hamill when we down Brewdog.
Yeah.
Just because you can drink it like a session beer, and again, that hats off to the brewers who make beers which are big, the opposite of Jamie, who make beer, what Jamie just said there, who make the big ABV beers, but you don't get the alcohol just masking everything. Again, it's all really well balanced. Jack Hammer, Cannonball, to name 2. And yeah, you and I have tried sessioning both of those, but strength-wise, it's not sessionable.
Sooner or later, that's going to catch up with you. Your body isn't going to be able to sustain.
No, something's going to go wrong at some point.
That level of drinking.
So yeah, I find that an interesting comment, that they're generally more flavoursome. Like I said, I find a lot of them more satisfying, but not necessarily flavoursome.
Okay. Next one from Steve Russian at Steve Russian. Lots of good session beers, but usually too easily tempted to something newer, bigger, or more interesting.
I don't see why a bigger beer is more interesting. That bit, I remember seeing that, and that was the thing which I sort of get. We're all easily tempted by something new, or the next pump clip, or the next tap. We've all done that. But I'm not sure I see that bigger equals interesting all the time.
I think that lends itself a little bit to what some other people were saying about maybe missing out on the big release, or the FOMO beers aren't necessarily sitting in this ABV category, are they? Because
generally, and I think you can read these comments out shortly, but yeah, you don't get the big splash on Twitter or the very artistic shot on Instagram of your 2.9% Kernel table beer. That doesn't exist as far as I'm aware. That people tend not to do that. So maybe that's us. That's down to all of us in this beer world. We all say, oh yeah, we enjoy them, we drink them, but we only shout about the FOMO ones.
Yeah, and I think that's summed up by Matt Chinnery at Half Pint Gen, who's
he?
Don't know, he was on Making Noise with us last week. The great quality session beers are there and in good numbers, but the hype, social media focus, and FOMO are all about the big ABV specials.
Yeah, and I'd say we're probably all a bit guilty of that. I mean, I suppose I do put my cask beer comments on social media, and most of them probably do come into that session strength arena, don't they?
Yeah.
And that's where Rach at Look at Brew. There's loads of decent session beers available. For what it's worth, I think people tend to overlook some excellent trad beers that are perfect for a session and are the heart and soul of British beer. I only ever see the same trendy beers get hyped up though, and they're usually high ABV beers. And I'd agree with Rach, and I think that goes back to what I was saying there, is that you know, and this is probably where I'm slightly odd Steve. You know, when I rock up in a pub, I will look to see what they've got on cask first of all, because I know that the cask will probably be a bit lower in the ABV than if I was going to hit a tap straight away, and I find it quite difficult to go from keg back to cask as well. I find it's a more natural progression to go cask to keg for me. Whether there's any logic in that, I don't know. And I would say, Rich, you're right. I think if you're talking about in a pub, and I think we've got a lot of comments that sort of split it out between being out drinking and actually what you can buy to take home as well. I'd say in a pub, really the only decent session strength beers a lot of the time for me, if we're talking sub 5%, will often be the cask offering, because the tap offering will often be the bigger the beasts, the big beers a lot of the time, whereas the cask will be that maybe a sub 4 to 5 is where you get your big range of cask beers, isn't it? And I will go for those. So yeah, and not that many people do. I mean, I had a beer from Mark Watson, who, you know, a friend of ours from the Essex Bottle Share, on Saturday at the Victoria Inn, and I then had a second one. It was 5.1% dark beer, really tasty, probably just a few points over what you class as sessionable, but you know, when I then, if you look at my check-ins, 2 beers later, I then had the Wylam Ham-Fisted Double IPA, which was 9.5%. That's definitely not sessionable.
No.
I dropped down to halves for that. A pint of cask, halves of the draft. But yeah, I think traditional session beers are perfect in that sort of bracket.
And I think a lot of people, I mean, there was a lot of love for what Rach said in her particular tweet there, and a lot of people then made similar comments, and just two of those I want to pick up. So the first one from Nate Southwood at NateDog27. Of course there are, just look at the hand pumps in any decent cask pub. So also in that sort of vein, from John Tilson at Witchwood Brewer 2, I'm a traditionalist at heart. The UK has oodles of great low ABV best bitters. It's what we've always been good at. Yeah,
it's just that you know, it's the good best bitters you want, isn't it?
Yeah.
Green King IPA comes in at 3.6%. We're drinking Little Big Pale Ale from Summer Wine Brewery at 3.5%. Having had a pint of Green King IPA very recently as part of an experiment, I know what one I'd want to session. I would session this. Sessioning Green King IPA is a whole different ball game.
I'd be happy to session this. I mean, we're both
finished now.
We're both finished. What were your final thoughts on that one?
I thought it was, you know, like I said, big fan of the Kernel table beer, and there is this is 0.6 of a difference, so that we have stepped up. I thought that the body of this one was really good. It just felt like a full beer. It didn't feel like oodles of flavour, some nice dry bitterness at the end. You know, the floral notes were nice and light. They weren't in your face.
Just incredibly drinkable. I mean, you know, I'm a little surprised at how much flavour and that you are getting out of these.
Pleasantly surprised.
Very pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said,
it's certainly an eye opener for me.
Yeah, and you know, and I think again, we probably have a slightly. I'm probably more likely to have something like I haven't at the moment. But my fridge is a bit low on everything at the moment. But I'm probably more likely to have to reach out for these anyway, aren't I? Absolutely, yeah. Than you, but I would have to say, if I didn't have to choose, if I was just choosing sub 4% on the first 2 beers so far, I would take the Pico Diego over the Kernel table beer. I would, and I'm a big fan of the Kernel table beer. Yeah.
So next up, we're making the massive jump up to 3.6%, a whole 0.1% up. This is from Gipsy Hill, and it's simply called Simcoe Pale Ale.
What's in it then?
It's part of a hop exposition series built around the hops. The grist is simple, with Simcoe the protagonist in the boil and cold side. So single hopped,
low ABV.
beer. I'm struggling with my words.
See, low ABV beers aren't helping you, are they?
They're not. Oh no. Well, it's got some nose on it.
That has. It's got like, I don't know, slightly woodiness on the nose almost, but...
Wow, that's really soft.
It's very soft. It's a different...
Smooth as well.
Yeah. It's got a smoother mouthfeel than the Pico Diego, and it's taking me back more to the Kernel table beer. But it's got a real... you know what it reminds me of, the mouthfeel? The Half Acre beers had recently.
Yes, absolutely.
The mouthfeel of that
Yeah.
is just the same to me as the tuna. Because I thought that was particularly smooth. That one. That's what that's, and you know, I think that's a pretty big compliment. Bearing in mind the Half Acre tuna was over 5% as well.
Yeah.
That's got a really, really smooth mouthfeel.
That's really tasty.
Yeah, and back to flavour, they are letting the hop shine.
Yeah, really tasty.
So low ABV and single hop. Usually, with maybe the exception of, say, something like Oakham Citra, ubiquitous.
Yeah.
Usually a single hop series, you're going to be going higher up the ABV, aren't you?
Absolutely. I mean, this, actually saying that, they've also used Magnum as a bitter in hop. So Simcoe's in there as the aroma hop.
Okay, so the bulk of our aroma and flavours is coming from the Simcoe.
Yeah.
But our tail end is coming more from the Magnum.
Yeah, but it's very low on the bitterness.
Yeah. It's not as bitter as either the first two beers.
No, it's much softer.
But it's still very clear. There's a lot of clarity in this beer. It's not it hasn't got that murkiness to it. That's really good. Like I said, the smoothness is quite astonishing, actually.
Yeah, and I think we did have someone say that I can't remember who it was now that said that they didn't feel as though low ABV beers really had the body to them, but I think what we're experiencing here is beers that are just incredibly well balanced for what they are.
And I think you can get some beers which don't have the body, but I've had beers which are over 5%, which I think are unbalanced and a bit thin as well. And then you go, Whereas,
you're disappointed.
Yeah. My feeling on these ones so far is I haven't felt like the mouthfeel and the body of the beer has left me thinking, oh yeah, it's a bit watery, isn't it?
Oh, that's the one thing I've not thought about any of these is that it's a bit thin.
And we're 3 beers in.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's dive back in for some more comments because there are plenty this week. So Roland Glue has been new by it. There's lots of good lower ABV, especially in the pan and hoppy section and sours, but they can be forgotten as they're usually the start of the night beers, not end of the night beers.
Well, we sort of touched on that, and we have done our best to find something, but we were struggling to find a dark beer. Outside of your traditional beers, and we're not recording in a pub, so we haven't got access to cask.
Yeah.
We couldn't see, if we're talking purely based on the place we're in, that many, like for you and I, it'd be a stout or a porter we're looking at to be being like the last beer. If we're replicating a session end of evening beer, stout porter, you and I are probably looking at 8% plus normally. Yeah,
because you kind of if you're out on a beery session, you're gradually working your way up to the big end of evening beer, aren't you?
But we were really struggling to find something that ticked the stout porter box, weren't we?
Yeah.
So, we found something, and so we'll reveal that in a little while. But Roland's point is well made, actually.
It's very well made, very well made indeed. So the beer nut said, fairly sure there are, but not enough people talk about them. Had Vocation's bread and butter today, never seen it mentioned in the UK beer discourse, but wowee, it's fantastic.
But that sort of echoes a few points, like from Rachel, from Matt. People don't seem to talk about it. Whereas I think, even with Cladwell, didn't really see that much noise about their small beer. And I thought that's some of the best things they put out for ages.
Yeah, I agree actually, and again, Paul at UNRCD did mention that as well. I would always want more sub 5% beers to session on, and there are lots of good ones out there. I love Cloudwater's small beer range and Northern Monk's Patrons Project Striding Edge, which was sensational for a 3% beer.
I never got to try that one, but
I got to try it, and it was incredibly drinkable. And I think Striding Edge was actually, I think they called it a light IPA at 3%. It was just, you could have drank that all day long.
Cool, well at 3% you can.
Yeah. The Owl Lady at the Owl Lady says there are plenty of all-day beers in core ranges and the big guns are often specials. Would be nice to see more interesting limited edition quaffers. Also, the strong ones are driving up the ABV considered session. Sub 4% used to be strong, but now it's a warm-up tipple.
Yeah, right. I mean, I always used to, when I was first started getting out, I'm drinking macro lagers, so they're in the 4 to 5% range. You know, if you then order a Kronenberg or a Stella, everyone takes a bit of a sharp intake of breath. It's like, why are you having that? You know? Whereas now, your first beer might be 6%. And you go, well, I'm buying it because of the flavour. That's okay then.
Yeah, fantastic. Job done. So we then had a few people talk about some other things, which I think was quite interesting as well. So Mark the Gasman at Mark the Gasman said, I think with minimum price per unit now in play, watch the small beer revolution begin.
Very interesting point, actually. I read that one. I thought, do you know what? I hadn't given that the slightest bit of consideration. The minimum unit price is that you've got that legally required now in Scotland, haven't you?
Yes.
But, you know, whether it comes down to us or not, I don't know. But I think it's a really good point, because if you then have to do a minimum price plus everything that gets added on through the chain at the point of dispense, then they could get more expensive, those big beers. And we already had the Furore last year of the, you know, £13 pint. I think that would be interesting if that has an impact, because when they lowered to the, was it like to make the people's beer, wasn't that 2.7% on the tax or something? And everyone said, no, watch to see what will happen. Not much did though, that I noticed.
There was a raft of big regional sun release beers at 2.7%.
Which I fairly much sort of bypassed me anyway. So.
Yeah.
But I think the unit is going to could affect everyone. So yeah, it's a very good point. It's actually quite a serious point. I didn't know that's what our polls did.
Well, sometimes they do. In a similar vein, in terms of things impacting on the increase in sessionable beers, we've got Joe Hill at Multiplex Rant said definitely an emerging trend towards session strength beers, though I'd expect it to pick up pace as the World Cup and summer approach. There's something about strong beers and winter time that just fits. So obviously, yes, this is a World Cup year. That means there's going to be a lot of football on the telly, which means possibly a lot of time spent in the pub. If you're avoiding macro products, you're going to want something that you can session on.
True, but as I've complained about before, a lot of the pubs that show football don't give you much choice apart from macro anyway, so that really doesn't become a problem. I end up on Guinness. But if I ended up in somewhere which did have sport on and had decent beer, then yes, especially if you're in a group, it's nice to find a session strength beer that you can go back to. So you're not giving your friends the wild and wacky name, but they think you're just winding them up about. As my friend did when she got to the pub before me and Michelle, and I'd given her saying, can you ask for Punk IPA and Dead Pony Club? And she just showed the phone to the barman. She thought I was winding her up. So I think, it's quite handy to find a session strength beer for two reasons. One, longevity, and two, easy to just stay on it then. So yeah, good point. I'm just surprised you knew it was a World Cup year. Someone else told you?
No, only because Joe told me in that tweet that only because it will always falls in the same year as the Winter Olympics, because they're on the same 4-year cycle.
Oh, okay. That's how you know.
That's how I know. Yeah, being a fan of the Winter Games. Yeah. Again, a slightly different one from Miles Lambert at Miles Lambert. A festival showcase for lower ABVs will be brilliant for this market. Magic Rock are obviously got their Sesh Fest this summer, which will see a lot of ingenuity deployed to lower ABV beers, which will really take things forward.
I would have loved to have gone to that.
Yeah, it's sold out in minutes, didn't it?
Even without it being sold out. I think you mentioned to me, and I think I already had something on that weekend. But that would really have appealed to me, especially being backed by someone like Magic Rock.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, so it's not just any old festival, or it's not just some sort of bland umbrella. It's Magic Rock.
And they've got quite a few beers in their range that come in fairly low ABV as well.
Yeah, I mentioned we had a pre-recording beer, and that was the Dancing Bear, the lager. What's that, 4.3?
Yeah.
Brilliant beer. Lovely lager. Quite happy session there, especially during the summer.
I'm going to be drinking a lot of that this year. I've already said it on I think Untapped and Twitter a couple of times, but that I am going to be smashing that all summer long because it just ticks so many boxes.
Yeah, I mean, we fairly much finished it before we'd really noticed it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that I'd be loved to hear what people say about that Sesh Fest.
Yeah, it'll be great to see the feedback on it as well. And I think again, it shows that the market is ready for something like that because the demand for it, tickets sold out almost immediately.
Yeah, which is, you know, and you could argue that most camera beer festivals are a sesh fest because most of them are that sessionable ABVs, aren't they? The bulk of beers at camera beer festivals come into what we're sort of terming tonight the session, but we know that for a lot of people those beers just aren't going to tick the boxes. Not the ABV, just the flavour.
It's the flavour, it's the presentation, it's
the conditioning perhaps at the event, loads of things. But you could argue that most camera beer festivals, if you wanted to call them anything, they are a session fest. They're a session festival.
That they are. They are, and I can't argue with you that they're not. But like I say, I just think, you know, because unfortunately most camera beer festivals, certainly the bigger, more popular ones where those sort of sessionable beers are going to be held in the summer doesn't necessarily lend itself to keeping those beers in the condition that
they have to work hard, especially the outdoor ones at the height of summer. But that's why a month from when we're recording, Affinity are having their cask festival, so that will be an interesting one as well because, like I said, if they bring the brewers they've got lined up, bring their cask A game, you could end up some really good session type cask beers, which are hopefully served at their optimum as well. So that'd be quite interesting to see.
And you're going to that?
My plan is to go to it unless Greater Anglia come up with a new plan for me. But at the moment, touch wood, I have actually got trains which go all the way from point A to point B.
Wow!
I know.
On a weekend.
On a weekend. I think it's purely because it's in the middle of Easter.
Yeah.
I think that's the only reason. I think it's because maybe the engineering teams are actually off. So I think that I would love it if I rock up there and we find that there are some really good quality session strength cask beers. That'd be really good.
I look forward to your thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's dive in. We've got let's finish this beer.
Well, we've both almost finished.
We have. Final thoughts on the Gipsy Hill Simcoe Pale Ale.
Again, so easy to drink. The dryness at the end really lends itself for me. I love the dryness at the end. I'm probably still veering towards the summer wine brewery beer. Don't know, but there was something which just really ticked everything. But again, a tall boy sing fairly much. Right, they used the beer and hop, but for your flavours, your big flavours, single hop series at 3.6%. Because I think when Gipsy Hill started, wasn't that their ethos anyway? They wanted to make session strength beers.
Yeah, and I think if you look in the fridges here, even the other beers that they've got from them here, I don't think they tip the 5%. I think.
So I'm sure that one of the first London Brewers Market I went to at Spitalfields, I spoke to them, and that's what they were talking about. They wanted to create beers which were good, but you could drink more than one.
And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
No.
Is there? Because, like I say, in the summer, ideally you want to be able to, if it's a nice warm day, you've got friends around, you're having a barbecue, you're sitting in the garden, you don't want to be on your arse but before the barbecue's even been lit, do you?
No one wants to be on their arse before the barbecue's lit. That's just wrong.
Yeah.
No one wants to do that, and because you miss out on all the meat. That's just ridiculous. Who wants to miss out on the meat?
Well, you miss out on the best part, of the essence of the barbecue.
Yeah, the actual barbecue bit.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, I would probably had my eyes a little bit more open than you, but I'm starting to see that there's some really good beers out there. I mean, these last two beers I haven't had before, and I haven't had that iteration of the table beer. So these are new. Unlike the one you're popping open now.
Yes, which is a beer that I have long wanted to feature on the show, and now it's available in bottles.
You found a way to do it.
Finally found a way to do it. So this is beholden the marvel that is
the oft mentioned
Track Sonoma Pale Ale, which comes in at 3.8% and is a beer that I have many times cited as probably being the best beer in the UK at this ABV.
And you have, and I have said that it's not far off being one of the best ones as well for me. And we've mentioned it before, doing it on cask and keg when we were up at Manchester last year.
Yeah.
And I think even I said I thought the keg version was just had a little bit of an edge on the cask, which was a big surprise to me, I have to admit. But yeah, did the Ale House have this on at some point?
They had it on cask, yeah.
I think I missed out on it then.
Which no, it was pre-bottle share.
Oh, was it one of the bottle share nights?
Yeah.
Right. Cheers.
Cheers.
Yep.
It's not very much else you can say about that, really, is there?
I think it's really good of them to name a beer after Mark Johnson's cat, though.
Yeah, very. It's almost in honour.
Yeah, in honour of Mark Johnson.
I mean, that's just full of citrus.
Again, but it's different to the last two beers, isn't it?
It's light, it's juicy.
It's very light.
There's hardly any bitterness on the finish.
No, the bitterness, and especially if we were going on bitterness levels, I'll say this is the lowest so far out of the three with the previous three. So out of four, this is the lowest. But it's not detracting from anything.
No, it's just bags of flavour.
Yeah. Now, I think we would both probably agree, Steve. We'd probably try to have had these bottles a little bit sooner to when you bought them. But then, I mean, they've still got 3 months on them.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've got two different dates here as well.
Oh, have we?
Yeah, so you're drinking
Mine's
one
June.
That's June, and I'm drinking one that's actually the beginning of March.
Oh, so you've slightly gone out of date?
Yeah.
But sorry, not you personally, for anyone who's listening. I wasn't being rude to Steve.
No, and I think that's purely because the beer that I've got, we bought for a show previously that has ended up getting pushed back and moved around, and we've ended up featuring it when we've featured it.
I think your one's a bit darker.
Maybe a little bit, yeah. I mean, obviously they're different batches, as well. But I've got to say, even having a beer that's probably at the end of its life, it's not detracting from any of the flavour in it. That's still the Sonoma that
you come to expect and love.
I come to expect. Yeah, absolutely, it's incredible.
Yeah, I'm massively happy to see these in bottles. It'd be very dangerous if Track suddenly started putting Sonoma in cans and they ended up at M&S. But
can you imagine?
Well, I am. That's I am. You can tell I already am. But I mean, yours has got some great carbonation on it as well. Still.
Yeah, I mean, that's just full of life.
Yeah,
isn't it? Okay, so while we're enjoying this, let's just go over a final couple of comments. So from Grandad Greg at Greg1954, he simply said, "I'd go with need to reassess my purchasing decisions." Because I pretty much need to do more of the same in terms of buying some lower ABV beers rather than just going for the big stuff. We then had Carl Gunner at KL Gunner. There's plenty out there, well, according to you and Martin. The problem is if you don't live in a major city or towns where the breweries are located, you don't get them in local pubs. Great point.
And I think that is something, and I think you can probably relate to that.
Absolutely.
You can read all about these great beers, but your local pub ain't going to have anything we've had tonight.
Absolutely not, no.
That ain't going to happen.
The closest I'm going to get to anything like this not even from any of these breweries, is Spoons in my local town.
Yes.
And seeing what their offering is.
Yeah, because they may well say have Oakham Citron, as an example. And where Carl lives, which is sort of a few miles more north of me, getting up just over to the Suffolk border and stuff. And yes, he's got access to, a couple of Adnams pubs and the Adnams shop, but outside of that, then it's going to be quite hard to find those really good flavoursome beers, because I think being in Suffolk, you then start to come into that Green King issue as well. So, yeah, I think it's a really good point, well made. They are out there, but can you get hold of them?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're out, you could do an online order and you could have all of these ones, couldn't they?
Easily, yeah.
You do the right online order from the right place, you can get a great selection of sub 4% beers. Yeah. But if you don't want to do that and you're talking about beers you're having when you're out, then that's probably where you may be finding that, although, what Rach said and what Matt said and what I agree with, if you've got tied pubs and you rock up and they've got Doom and IPA, then they're session. Probably not one to be one session.
Exactly. And then the final comment this week, and just going, before I read this out, let's just go back to the original question that we asked, because you need to ask the question to get the answer here. So the question was, are there enough good session beers around, or is it just about the big ABV now? And taking this week's award for the tweet that everybody else wishes that they had tweeted first is Mark Johnson, at Mark N. Johnson. If I go out and buy 6 types of mild cheddar when I really fancy mature, then it isn't the shop or the cheese producer's fault. The choice was there. There are plenty of session beers. There are plenty of strong beers too. Buy better. I think that, to a certain extent, sums it up, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The beers are there, and we've demonstrated that, we're lucky enough to be recording in a bottle shop, so we actually had the choice of going through the fridges tonight and saying, right, which beers...
I think the beers are there in the off-trade, and the beers are there online. I think it's harder sometimes to get good quality session beers in your pub.
Completely agree with that.
But I still loved Mark's comment about buying 6 types of mild cheddar.
Yeah. So I was like, because at the time I think I commented on Twitter about this.
Pete McCarry had done if you had to lose beer or cheese.
Yeah. Which one would you live without?
And then you scan it, and Mark's then tweeted about beer and cheese.
Yeah, and I'm like, Mark, I think you've replied to the wrong poll, but yeah, I think that sums it up perfectly in terms of. We might say, there are no big ABV beers there, and I've been there a few times recently where I've opened my fridge and I've almost sighed, because I've looked at the beers and I'm like, where's the sessionable beer?
I've got loads of lovely beers in both cupboard and fridge, and I have done that recently as well, because we had a potential issue with there was a few logistical problems which may have arisen for this recording session, so we were coming up with some backup plans, and I said, I ain't got any session. I've got no, what I would class in this, we're still in sub 4% territory here. I haven't got that. I had 0.5% beers, and I had plus.
there was nothing, yeah. And I mean, I place my monthly beer order with Beer Central, and that is down to me what goes in that box. And that box normally arrives, and generally it's full of 6% plus beers. And then I'm found stood in front of the fridge going, well, I've got nothing sessionable.
I think for me it's because I know that when I do go to the pub, I'm always looking for the sessionable beers. So I'm always thinking for beers at home, I'll have the opposite. But there are still times at home when you want a sessionable beer.
Well, I love a beer when I'm cooking. I love to just be able to be swigging at a beer while I'm cooking. Now, I don't want one of my big beers while I'm cooking. I don't want to be necking a 8% beer while I'm making dinner.
You want a beer you enjoy, but you don't really think about.
Yeah, that I can just stand there and drink out of the can or out of the bottle or whatever. And I'm not thinking about, do I need to take a picture about this? What am I going to say on Untapped about this? It's a cooking beer. That's its purpose.
Yeah.
It helps me enjoy the cooking more because I'm having a beer at the same time. So yeah, I think yes, buy better. If you've got the selection there and you've got the option to buy from a range, then also include in your order a number of session beers.
Yeah, and generally, although, as has been said in our comments we've received and from what we've heard from Bruce before, there is an art and a skill and a lot of work to get good quality session beers. They will still generally be cheaper because of the ABV. So, your Beer Central order, which generally, I see your tweets, which ones you're getting, yes, sub 5% doesn't really exist in the Beer Central order that you place.
No.
You throw a couple of these in, your beer outlay probably goes down.
It does, and I have now actually asked Sean if I can have a monthly standing order of 4 cans of Dancing Bear in my order as well, because I'm enjoying that beer so much and it's so easily drinkable that I want to know that I've always got one of those in the fridge. Yes, 4 cans isn't going to last me a month, but at least I know I've got that as a fallback.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would say one of the perfect fallback session beers in the fridge would be something like Dead Pony Club.
Yeah,
I still think that's a fantastic beer.
And if all else fails, you can go to any supermarket and buy that now.
You can buy a 4-pack for like £6.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can go too far wrong. Myself with Dead Pony Club, I think it's got bags of flavour.
Absolutely.
Very easy to drink, and I've had it enough times where, again, I don't have to worry about taking a picture. I still worry about tapping it in. For anyone who's worried there for a moment, I'll still be tapping it in, but I don't have to think about it. It's easy to drink. It's definitely, say for Clayton, it's one of the beers he will take out dog walking beer, because he knows what it's like. He knows what to expect.
Beer, isn't it? It's what, 3.8%?
Yeah, and it's consistent.
Yeah,
as well. It's probably next to Jackhammer, probably the beer that they are really consistent with, because Punk does have its moments, doesn't it? But
it does.
Dead Pony Club, rarely.
Dead Pony Club, Jackhammer, green cans.
What more can you say?
I can't say any more than beer in a green can is 90% of the time perfect. 95% of the time perfect. Okay, loads of great comments this week. Just really, again, always want to thank people for making the effort and taking the time to actually reply to the polls as well. And I do just want to reiterate once more that actually, because we had a lot of new people commenting, particularly on this poll as well, we're not ignoring you by not replying to these tweets. It's just if I get into replying to the tweets as they're coming through, we don't have any content.
Yeah, and and also there are, I will, so the Beer O'Clock show will not make any comments, and I rarely do myself, but because we don't want to spoil what the comment was in the first place, what we're going to say.
Yeah.
That sort of spontaneity about it. Because sometimes it's quite nice to just say it as you see it as well. And I quite like doing that. So, yeah. But we love it when both established listeners and people who are fans of the show, as well as new listeners, start getting involved on Twitter.
Absolutely.
I always find it a bit of a thrill when I see a new name come up with a comment.
It's great, yeah. And we're getting a lot more of that as well. Sonoma, we have both pretty much drained.
Well, I have finished
our
mine,
glasses.
and I've opened our closing out drink already. So it's what I expect from Sonoma now.
It's just consistently good.
Yeah, love that they've got it in the bottles. Again, Sonoma was the one I knew what to expect, and table beer to a certain extent slightly different. The 2 cans, Summer Wine and Gipsy Hill, were both fantastic. I am still thinking, for me, because the last beer is a little bit different, is Sonoma still your one?
It is, but it's being pushed by that Summer Wine beer.
Really is, isn't it?
Yeah. Sonoma is fantastic.
I suppose the difference is we've now experienced Sonoma across 3 dispense methods, whereas the Pico Diego, we've done it just from the can. So for us, there's also that love that we know that if we go in there get a cask, good, great, tap, good, great, bottle, good, great, ticks all the boxes again. The Pico Diego is really pushing it though. It
is really pushing it, and I think maybe where it might edge it slightly is on that bitterness. At the end, it had that cutting bit of finish that I really enjoy.
Yeah.
That's maybe dialed down a little bit in the Sonoma, but the Sonoma is it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, we went in ABV, didn't we?
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't really know what the bitterness was going to be like on a few of the beers anyway. If you were going on bitterness, you probably would have gone Sonoma first, I would argue, because there was a bitterness through the kernel.
I'm probably the Gipsy Hill first, so I found that the softest of all the beers.
I thought it was soft, but I thought it was still quite dry at the end. Sonoma doesn't have dryness or bitterness at the end, but it does have it sort of while you're drinking it, and then sort of stops, but doesn't sort of stop making you think, where's that gone?
Yeah.
It's really, that's a really fine balance, but yeah, so you could have gone, if you're doing bitterness, you could have gone Sonoma, table beer, Simcoe, and Pico Diego's, but 4 beers within 1% of each other.
Yeah, that's the thing that's incredible, is that they sit within that same, it's 1% between those 4 beers.
And all really good. I
And
mean,
none of them are lacking flavour, body.
yeah, and we had a bottle each of the Kernel table beer, we had a bottle each of the Sonoma, and we've shared the 2 tall boys for Gipsy Hill and Pico Diego. I'm feeling alright.
Yeah, I'm feeling fine.
So what did I crack open then, Steve?
So this was the last beer, and we've mentioned this a couple of times, that we were struggling to think of or find a stout or a porter under 4%. Certainly from the selection we had here, but neither of us could come up
Couldn't really
with
rack my brains for one either.
And then we noticed in the fridge, just hiding in the corner, this little black can. Don't worry, it's not Guinness.
Yeah, we're finishing with a Guinness.
Yeah, but so this is it's from Adnams, and this is their Blackshore Stout, and it's 4.2%. I have to say though, actually having just said about Guinness, that the can is black and beige.
Yeah, it's got.
It's.
Although the typeface is obviously very much not Guinness.
I feel like they're trolling Guinness.
The colours are very Guinness.
A little bit here. So yeah, it's a 4.2% stout from Adnams.
Yeah. Have you had the Blackshore Stout before?
I have. I think I've had it maybe on keg before.
I'm not sure. Do they do it on cask? I've definitely had it on tap before.
It's got quite a fruity nose to it, hasn't it?
It's got a fruity nose. Flavour-wise, I'm sort of getting hints of licorice with that coffee.
There's.
It's almost like a blackjack.
It's just like there's just hints of everything. There's no dominant flavour. There's a hint of licorice. There's a hint of coffee. There's a hint of chocolate. No massive roasted flavours coming through on that. Really balanced, soft finish to it.
Arguably, it's got the finished mouthfeel.
Yeah,
I don't mean
yeah.
mean that to its detriment. I mean that, you know, in comparison to the lighter beers we've had, both in ABV and colour, this looks like the thickest beer we've had, but mouthfeel-wise, no.
Again, though, in terms of keeping with the theme of the show of sessionable beers, this is light enough to be able to possibly session this.
Out near where Michelle's brother and sister-in-law live, when they live a few miles out from Southwold, and which, you know, is arguably quite handy. One of their pubs that we used to go to, I think I was having an evening where I had some mosaic, then I went on to this, and I think I did 3 or 4 pints of it, and plenty easy to do that.
You could.
And I think on tap it felt a little bit thicker as well.
Yeah.
Than out of the can, and I think you find that with some dark beers in the cans. You know, again, comparing it to Guinness, a little bit unfairly, but Guinness in the can is a lot thinner than Guinness out of nitro, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm getting a little bit of bitterness starting to come through on that now, and maybe that's just a case of my palate adjusting.
Yeah,
from going
from the big,
very light.
well, from the very soft Sonoma, which had very little, I think. But yeah, the flavours, nothing's coming and punching you in the face. But yeah, I'm getting little bits of the dark chocolate, little bits of just a hint of that licorice, and I don't think there's any licorice in it, but it's just that underlying flavour that I'm getting sort of at the back of it. Very drinkable, though.
Incredible.
But that was the only one we could find.
That was the only one we could find. But we'd love to hear if anybody knows of a sub 4% stout or porter
Good. I mean, you know,
that we should be trying.
Yeah. Name ones we should try.
Not something from a local brewery in a 500ml bottle necessarily.
Yeah.
Something that's fairly widely available that we might be able to pick up. Just a couple of things to just mention before we finish up this week then. So first of all, we're grateful to Liquorice for hosting us tonight, and we've also bought most of the beers from Liquorice tonight as well. But there was a moment last night before recording where there was a massive gas leak in Shenfield and the entire area was evacuated, and we didn't know whether we'd be able to record tonight. And we reached out to Paul at Two Brew in Colchester to see if he'd be able to help us out, particularly in terms of supplying beers, and he was more than willing to go to his shop on a day that he's not normally open, meet one of us and let us select some beers from his fridge. So I just want to give a massive shout out to Paul for that. We're really grateful for him being so amenable in trying to help us out in our moment of need. And also just want to say get well soon to Carl at the Bearded One, who's currently recovering in hospital.
Yeah, I think he's still in hospital, but so he had some accident last week, but get well soon, Carl. You've got a wedding this year. Get yourself sorted, man.
Speedy recovery.
Yes, and I'm sure that everyone else who knows you or knows of you will wish you the same as well.
Absolutely. Next week, mate, come on, you can do this week.
This one I do know.
Because you've set up the next show.
This one I do know because I was working hard at the weekend. I forced myself and my son, who cheekily put on Facebook standard Saturday behaviour when we turned up at the Victoria Inn. We're basically doing a pub themed episode where we are going to talk about the pub. Being in a pub, drinking in a pub, what's good about a pub, what's not good about a pub. But we're also sharing this with Andy, who you will remember from the Sparkler episode. Richard, his bar manager, who also got the chance to say about 3 words thanks to Andy on the Sparkler episode. But also Andy's other half, Sheena, who has been a landlady previous to her Victoria Inn life as well, will be joining us. So hopefully we can have some really good conversations with them about life in the pub. I did a lot of work on Saturday about that. That's why I had to have a second half of the ham-fisted double IPA.
As always, if you want to get involved in any part of the show, use the hashtag Hopinions, ask questions, get involved in the poll. Who knows, you could end up with your own segment if you get involved.
Exactly, if you ask enough questions
just like Paul has done. Just another reminder as well, obviously the last 2 episodes, we've mentioned this, but particularly in relation to the last episode where we featured the Beer Bods Ones to Watch box for this year, that's still available on beerbods.co.uk, and if you use the code BeerO'Clock18 you can get 10% off of that box and enjoy those 12 beers at your leisure rather than, as we did, squeezed into an hour and a half between 4 of us, which was a lot of fun. But as always, this has been great going through the lower end of the spectrum.
Yeah, because we do beer, some big beers, and we've actually purposely set out to do some big beers sometimes, haven't we? I've enjoyed all of these, and I would repeat buy all of these.
I would, absolutely.
My favourite, if I take Sonoma out because I knew exactly what I was expecting from Sonoma, on my new beers, that's Summer Wine Brewery.
I think I'm with you on that, actually. And as I said earlier, I think it maybe just edges Sonoma on the bitterness.
Yeah, on the bitterness it does as well. Sonoma came a bit earlier for me. I've had it on, like I said, various dispense methods. But having read Mark's recent post about his visit to Summer Wine Brewery, which isn't that far from, I think it was Huddersfield, because he went there on match day, didn't he? As a pre-match day thing. Wouldn't mind rocking up there and trying a few of their beers as well, because we've tried a few of them recently, and
enjoyed them all.
Enjoyed them all.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, until next time, mate.
Cheers.